And then, of course, there's written in the Vedic texts and things, they talk about these Vyanas, which were flying machines and things. I could say that it shows from the Pyramid of Giza having been a energy generator, that after the deluge, it took some 8 or 9 or 10 generations of people to again be in the region, and they did what they could to jumpstart the Pyramid of Giza as a power plant, and it explains the explosion of how the ceiling of the Pyramid of Giza in the King's Chamber has been blown up, and it can have been an enormous force that blew that. But it shows that people can have had a beautiful technology of a time gone by, and then the priests who survived can have passed on some of this information, but it wasn't enough for them to be able to have the knowledge as to how to start the pyramid back up again. And then what they did was to have actually blown it up more, you know. So certainly most people who've considered nutrition and our past have only thought in terms of going back perhaps 35,000 years of some knowing, or even 100,000 years of some knowing, which in our evolution of time on the earth here, 100,000 years represents only 7 steps that you could take after having walked for 3 days. So each day, just an average person could walk around about 8 miles fairly easily, carrying a bit of a load. That's an average. So if somebody walked for 3 days and all the steps they took, and then just at the end of the 3 days they took 7 steps, those 7 steps represent around about 100,000 years, and that's just not enough time for us to have evolved from our digestive tract, fitting exactly more into a frugivores. And of course, it could be shown that the ancient civilizations that existed in Lemurian time, going back more than 50,000 years and up to 50,000 years ago, we were living in the Garden of Eden, and there was an abundance of fruits and vegetables and this sort of thing. And in the Isle of Man in England, England, of course, was connected to the continent back in these times, and there was a land bridge where you could walk from England all the way through to around Africa, all the way across the Indian Ocean and the Pacific through Australia, all the way to South America. And in the Isle of Man, there was an ancient civilization of people that lived there, and when archaeologists have done their digging in things, they find that these people were, though there was an abundance of all sorts of flesh that could have been had, not a single bone was found in any of this site, but that you can find lots of evidence of nuts and things that people ate. Most writers writing about our ancient past and books that children are given as they look into the past only consider people to be, they put it in terms of a hunter before a gatherer, but we only have in ourselves, with our hands and teeth and our anatomy, are really the physiology of a gatherer, and we really don't have anything about ourselves, which shows that we can have been carnivorous or even omnivorous. But we live in a time, of course, where when people are looking back into the past, there's a vast time frame which is missing, from most people's repertoire, and they just consider that perhaps things just started, 35,000 years, 100,000 years ago, 150,000 years ago at the most, or something. But these things which we've been talking about, especially like the beautiful metallic tubes that were found in chalk in France, and the very beautiful grooved spheres that are found in South Africa, in the mines there, which is made out of a metal which we really don't have much of, and no one has made anything like that on the earth. And some of these beautiful spheres that have been found, they've got perfectly beautiful symmetrical grooves around these metal spheres. And inside some of the spheres there's a spongy type of material which nobody quite really knows what it is. And then some are hollow and empty. But all of these artifacts and things certainly point to a time gone by, which is not really talked about in the history books, and as I say, are bricks that really don't fit in the present wall that we've built. But if you put this brick into the equation, it sort of causes the wall that exists at the moment to come completely tumbling down. Yes, it is. Well, it would be. It is. That people can be tuning into the program that we're talking about right now and start to become more learned, that we can have, not been told the history that actually really does exist, There's, of course, during the years of 1786 and 1787 and 1788, the Auxin province in France, there was people that were acquiring stone for the rebuilding on a vast scale of a palace of justice, and the stone was a beautiful limestone, a beautiful deep grey. And it's the kind which we tend to, when you come across a quarry, and then it hardens by exposure more to the air. The strata that's separated from one another by a bed of sand mixed with clay, which is more calciferous, and which first was presented no appearance of any foreign bodies, but after the workmen had removed the first 10 beds, they were astonished in taking away the 11th to find, that the inferior surface was at a depth of 40 or 50 feet, and it was covered in shells. Of course, every person can look upon high in the mountains and find shale, and that's evidence that this was even at 10,000 feet up, was at sea level at one point, and certainly the Himalayas. There's lots of evidence to show that though it's several miles high, there's lots of evidence of shale and things and all sorts of substances which only can have formed as a result of, at one point, this sort of being more at sea level.